The folder hit the conference table so hard the sound echoed off the walls. Karen Lowell, queen of the Brookside Park Homeowners Association, actually jumped backward, her manicured hand flying to her chest, eyes wide. For 3 years, she'd ruled our quiet neighborhood with a clipboard, a glare, and a god complex. But now, staring down at the official property deed with my name printed clearly at the top, she looked like someone had just told her the moon was made of cheese. She read it once, then again. Her lips moved silently, trying to find an escape in the ink. There wasn't one. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the end of her reign of terror. The payoff for months of digging, documenting, and outsmarting her. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just another homeowner she could bully. My name is Ethan Cole, and I'm a real estate attorney who specializes in property law and title disputes. And when Karen Lowell decided to pick a fight with me over my own land, she picked the wrong person. The first knock. 6 months earlier, I'd bought what I thought would be my dream home, a classic colonial tucked into the leafy streets of Brookside Park. After years of 70-hour workweeks in corporate law, I wanted quiet evenings, a garden, maybe a dog. The previous owner, Mr. Dalton, had kept the place pristine. Then, 2 weeks after moving in, I heard the sharp, rhythmic click-click-click of high heels marching up my walkway. Through the window, I saw a woman in her 50s, hair in a stiff blonde bob, clutching a clipboard and a thick folder like it was a holy relic. She rang the bell 3 times, then banged on the door for good measure. That was my first meeting with Karen Lowell. She smiled, a tight, customer service smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good afternoon. I'm the president of the Brookside Park Homeowners Association, and we need to discuss several urgent violations on your property. Violations? I echoed. I'd barely unpacked. She laid out photos like evidence in a trial. My mailbox was the wrong shade of black. My garden hose was visible from the street. And my bird feeder, yes, the one hanging from my oak tree, was an unauthorized structure that required committee approval. Each came with a fine. Total, $850. Due in 30 days. I tried reason. I'm new here. Could I see the bylaws that mention these? Her fake smile vanished. Ignorance isn't an excuse, she snapped. Our rules are what keep property values high. When I pressed her for documentation, she got flustered and ended the visit with a threat. Failure to comply will result in additional fines and potential legal action. She left thinking she'd intimidated me. She didn't realize she'd just walked into a lawyer's house with fake laws. The paper trail. That night, I pulled out every document from closing and read through the Brookside Park covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CCRs. The original rules were reasonable. No junkyards, no uncut grass, nothing about mailbox paint or bird feeders. But I found a series of recent amendments added by Karen and her board. Clauses so absurd they read like satire. Worse, they weren't even properly approved. The original covenant required 60% of homeowner votes for changes. These were signed by only 3 people, Karen and her 2 cronies. The next morning, I called the HOA office and formally requested copies of all current rules and the meeting minutes showing these approvals. The secretary sounded nervous. I'll have to check with Mrs. Lowell. Then she hung up. 3 days passed. No response. So I sent a certified letter citing state law. They had 10 business days to provide the documents. Instead of a reply, Karen showed up again, this time with 2 board members flanking her like bodyguards. She accused me of being a troublemaker and slapped me with another round of fines. My total, $1,500. That's when I knew it wasn't about community standards. It was a racket. The discovery. I went to the county recorder's office. What I found there made my blood run cold. The Brookside Park HOA had been legally dissolved 3 years earlier for failure to file annual reports. It no longer existed. Every amendment Karen used to fine people was invalid. Worse, the signatures on those amendments belonged to people who didn't even live in the neighborhood at the time. She wasn't just overzealous. She was running a fake HOA, a personal cash machine disguised as authority. I dug deeper. Over the last 3 years, she'd collected tens of thousands from residents, mostly seniors and new families, through intimidation and fabricated rules. Some sold their homes rather than fight. One widower, Mr. Scott Avery, had paid over $4,000 to keep his late wife's rose garden in compliance. When I showed him proof that the HOA didn't exist, he cried. That's when I decided, This ends publicly. Planning the exposure. Step 1. Document everything. I installed cameras around my home and saved every letter, threat, and notice. Step 2. Gather the victims. I met quietly with neighbors. Every single one had a story. Fines, harassment, late-night notes threatening liens, whispers about who didn't belong. Step 3. Confront Karen in front of everyone she'd bullied. I invited every homeowner to a Saturday meeting at the community center. Nearly 40 showed up, half the neighborhood. I presented my findings. The HOA had been dissolved by the state. The amendments were never recorded. The fines were illegal. The money was being deposited into Karen's personal bank account. The room erupted. People were furious. Joyce Harper, my elderly neighbor, stood up shaking. She threatened to sue me over my daffodils. Mr. Avery described how she drained his savings. For years, everyone thought they were alone. Now, united, they realized they'd been conned. We decided together we'd confront Karen at her next official board meeting. The showdown. The following weekend, the Brookside Park HOA board meeting began at 3 p.m. sharp in the community hall. I arrived early, setting up my laptop and projector. I had everything: state records, bank documents, copies of checks, and my property deed. When Karen strutted in with her clipboard, she looked confident. "Thank you for attending," she began. "Today we'll be addressing several serious violations and unpaid fines." I stood. "Before we proceed, I'd like to ask a question about the association's legal authority." Her eyes narrowed. "Resident comments at the end, Mr. Cole." But the crowd wasn't with her anymore. "Let him speak," someone said. "Yeah, we deserve to hear this," another added. Her composure cracked. "If you continue to disrupt official business," she barked, "you'll be fined and possibly removed from the meeting." Perfect. She'd just claimed official power in front of witnesses. I clicked the projector. The first slide filled the wall, the state record showing the Brookside Park HOA, dissolved 3 years ago. Her face drained of color. "That's fake," she shouted. "Outdated." I showed the next slide, her amendments with forged signatures. Then the checks, made out directly to Karen Lowell. Each one proof of theft. Her board allies quietly slipped out the back. She was alone now, facing 40 furious neighbors. Voices rose. People demanded refunds. Mr. Avery shouted, "You stole from us." And then, the final blow. The deed. I walked up to the table, set down the final folder, and opened it slowly. "This," I said, "is my property deed. And it proves that the small wooded area behind our homes, the land you've been calling common space, is actually mine." Gasps rippled through the room. The deed clearly showed that when Mr. Dalton bought the property years ago, the developer sold him that entire section of land. Meaning Karen had been trespassing for years and issuing fines over land she didn't own. She stared at the deed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Her entire scheme depended on the illusion of control. The paper in front of her destroyed it. Mr. Avery stood again, voice trembling with anger. "You ruined people's lives for money you had no right to take. We want every cent back." Karen tried to recover, claiming she'd acted in good faith, that it was just a misunderstanding. No one bought it. The police were already aware, and I'd filed complaints with the state attorney general's office the day before. Her empire crumbled right there, in front of the neighbors she'd spent years bullying. The aftermath. The following weeks were a blur of justice. The state launched a formal investigation. Karen Lowell was charged with fraud, theft, and extortion. Over $60,000 in stolen funds were traced to her accounts. She eventually pled guilty, served jail time, and was forced to sell her house to pay restitution. The neighborhood changed overnight. Without her constant harassment, Brookside Park became what it was always meant to be, a community. Mr. Avery replanted his rose garden, and neighbors helped him expand it. Joyce Harper started a monthly book club. People held block parties instead of meetings filled with threats. For the first time in years, kids played on sidewalks without anyone taking pictures for violations. Lessons that last. The state attorney general used the case to strengthen laws against fraudulent HOAs. Other scams were uncovered across the state using the same tactics. My case became a teaching example in law schools and homeowner workshops. As for me, I stopped working for corporations and started helping regular people, families, retirees, first-time buyers, stand up to predatory HOAs. I learned something profound. Fraud thrives on isolation and ignorance. Karen Lowell's power came not from authority, but from people being too afraid or uninformed to challenge her. Once we stood together, she had nothing. Today, Brookside Park doesn't have an HOA. We maintain our neighborhood through cooperation, not coercion. Property values are higher than ever, not because of rules, but because people actually want to live here. The wooded area Karen once claimed as common space is now our unofficial nature preserve, walking trails, bird feeders, and benches built by volunteers. A symbol of freedom reclaimed. Sometimes I still look at that deed hanging in my home office. It's more than proof of ownership. It's a reminder that truth and courage will always outlast fraud and fear. And that, in the end, even the most self-righteous Karen collapses when the paperwork doesn't lie.